Welcome everyone to this panel, Navigating the Landscape of Modern and Contemporary Blue Chip Prints. I think we've got a great discussion in store ahead. We're covering the blue chip market in particular, with speakers from a diverse cross-section of marketplaces. So there'll be a chance to hear about their different business models for anyone who's new to this field and anyone who's not, which I'm sure a lot of you aren't. We're going to look at the current state of the blue chip print market. We're going to look at issues around pricing, a bit of investment, and some of the challenges that buyers and sellers are facing, as well as a few predictions perhaps for 2025 if you've not heard enough of them already. There'll also be a chance for a quick Q&A at the end, around 10 minutes. So please do pop your questions in the chat and we'll do our best to answer them. So I'd like to introduce our speakers now. We've got Jess Bromovsky. She's a sales director at MyArtBroker and she joined the company from Bonhams, where she worked for 6 years. We have Huw Lougher. Sorry, Huw. I did ask about how to pronounce that. Huw Lougher, who founded the online gallery Lougher Contemporary in 2015. And his gallery has a strong presence in the secondary market for editions by blue chip contemporary artists. Huw is also an investor. I don't think you'll mind me saying that, Huw. So I think we'll bring a bit of that element into the discussion. And last but not least, we've got Carolin Von Massenach, and she's head of prints and multiples at Bonhams Auction House in London. She joined Bonhams in 2016, and she's been instrumental in the growth of that department. She leads the UK team, and she oversees all prints auctions in its London sale room. So she is your woman at auction for prints. Welcome, everyone. I want to kick off with a bit of a big question. I hope you don't mind, but it's something that it's a term that we use frequently in the art market, and that's blue chip. And it sort of got me thinking, Carolin and I, we discussed this ahead of this panel. You know, what defines blue chip? I'd like to ask you each, if I may, you know, what makes an artwork or an object blue chip? Is it a name? Is it its value? What are the factors? Carolin, maybe we can start with.
Yes, because I found it really interesting when you asked me, like, so Carol, what would you define as a blue chip artist or print? And I was like, that's actually a really good question, because like we use that word constantly and like throw it around us, and you see it everywhere. But like, what is it actually? And like, I think I read somewhere that the roots are for this word in poker, that it was always the highest value chip, the blue chip, and then it sort of found its way into the finance industry, and that sort of, and then from there it jumped into the art world, and I found that very interesting. And probably at auction, I would say, we are very familiar with the term, but I think at auction we normally sell like artists that have a very strong secondary market anyway. So for us, you could argue like all artists that we sell at auction are blue chip artists, because they are, they have a very strong secondary market, achieve very great results at auction. And in probably my opinion, what defines blue chip is the demand, the value, and the reputation of an artist or an artwork. So I would say, you could even argue Rembrandt and Dürer. I know this panel is about modern and contemporary. They are blue chip artists because they are artists have a very solid reputation. Their work is in high demand. They are constantly performing well at auction, and they have a very strong value. So that's just from an auction point of view, probably the criteria that I would use. Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I'd agree with Dürer. You know, the reputation making him blue chip. Huw, perhaps I could ask you. I mean, we had a conversation about cause, and you know, he makes artworks ranging from collectibles, toys to paintings, and sort of things in between, including multiples and prints. Would you, what defines blue chip to you? Would a collectible by cause, by a brand name, by a blue chip artist also be a blue chip work?
Yeah, so hello everyone, nice to be here. It's great to be part of this narrative, and obviously thank you to MyArtBroker for organising this. I don't think there's any kind of one, there's no black and white definition of what blue chip is. I think often we use it a bit too often. For me, it's not so much, well, it's certainly not about the artwork or the piece. When I use the term blue chip, I'm really talking the context of the artist. And a bit like Helen just said, you know, I completely agree with everything she said. It's artists who have a very established reputation or brand, I would say, in the market, Typically, not always. They have institutional recognition. They have that track record of being exhibited at the biggest galleries and institutions in the world, although that's not always the case. And I can certainly think of a few artists where that's not the case. I'm sure we'll talk about one or two of them today. And I think you've got to look at price point as well. So, like I said, there is no black and white definition. I think, I've had this conversation many times in the past, and I think for me, where you see an artist whose works are consistently performing well at auction over a long period of time, and I would say certainly high six figures, seven figures, that's where you start talking about blue chip. I think artists who, have a good run, they're very in fashion. You see their works going from £10,000 or $10,000 up to $200,000-300,000. That doesn't make them blue chip, in my opinion. I think it's that kind of consistently strong secondary market over an extended period of time of 5, 10, 15, maybe 50 years that defines what blue chip is. And with that, it defines the market for their work as well.
I think that's interesting, and also looking at their market over their sort of museum shows, for instance, reputation to mean in some senses, that you had critical acclaim, but often now you find artists have market success before they have museum shows, which is sort of reverse of what it used to be. Jess, what's your view on blue chip? How do you define it, if I can say it?
Yeah, I mean, exactly what we've just said. It's all about this kind of, I think everyone uses it now in every scenario. We all talk about blue chip. We say we represent blue chip artists, and it's about mature markets. It's about sort of cultural significance. And just as Huw and Carolin said, it's sort of these artists that have strong investment potential, but I think they've already established themselves and they already are a known name on the market. And over time that has sustained. I think all these artists have a long track record.
Mm-hmm.
And very recognized.
It's probably certainly also like, because we were asking, is you're a blue chip artist, and he is, but I don't know, in sort of common practice, it seems that it's more sort of used for really contemporary artists, which is interesting, and probably at auction we don't use it that often. I mean, we are familiar with it, but I think it's more like maybe a gallery specific term, or I don't know. It's up for debate, but
you're right.
Yeah.
I don't get a press release for an auction house talking about blue chip artists. I don't think I ever have. I don't know what the equivalent would be. Would there be masters, or?
Yes, exactly.
You have a different terminology, but
exactly. Yeah.
But a lot of shared values there across different marketplaces. Yes. And so I wanted to go into that, drill down a bit into the different marketplaces we've got represented here. We've got Carolin from an auction house, MyArtBroker, an online marketplace, and Huw's gallery also being online. Perhaps I could ask you first, Carolin, about if you could talk us through the Bonhams model. If I had a print, say, and I wanted to sell it with you at Bonhams at auction, how would that work? From creation to estimation to sale. Can you sort of just run us through and run anyone through who might not be familiar with the process?
Yes. Yeah, basically Bonhams is a global auction house. We were founded in 1793. We have basically a wealth of experience and expertise. Just to mention it, we have over 60 departments worldwide as pure specialist departments, 13 sale rooms, and over 50 offices and representatives worldwide. From the prints end, we have several selling venues globally. We offer prints auctions in London, Paris, Brussels, New York, LA, and Boston. So we are really a global company catering to every collector and market, and offer basically auctions that are live auctions, online auctions, and private sales as well. Just sort of from the general side. And at Bonhams, we really pride ourselves that we say our motto is, bring it to Bonhams, we sell it to the world. So we have always the right platform for your work. And through these basically highly curated specialist sales that are public, open to the public, we give every single item the best setting to the best global exposure, because obviously all the auctions are online. Everyone can be bidding from wherever they are based and located. and find the hopefully the work they are looking for. And from the model, we put obviously an auction estimate on every piece. Like we do a very extensive research before we do so. That consists of a low estimate and a high estimate, and that's basically the estimate that we would feel this work could achieve at auction, basically the market value.
So if I had a print, Carolin, and I came to you and I needed it sort of valued, would you pick it up from me? Would I have to pay for a valuation? Would you then take it through sort of a conservation process, assessing the condition, and then you'd
Yes.
write the valuation?
Yeah, but like, so also, you know, like valuations with a view to sell at auctions are completely for free. So like you wouldn't even need to pay for it. And then obviously we would do an extensive research in catalog resonance and libraries. We work with obviously artist institutions, authentication boards, etc. But we would determine that value at auction and would also identify the best place where it should get offered. And this would obviously present you with a proper marketing strategy, how we can best expose it to the global market. And yeah, that's what we would do.
I have to ask you about fees also. You charge a buyer's premium as well as a seller's commission. Is that right? The buyer's premium is around 25% of the hammer price?
Yes.
Right.
It depends obviously on a bit on the hammer price, but like exactly roughly that's right. And it's very transparent because we obviously work with a market value, the hammer price, and the market is prepared to pay for this work, right? So it's a very transparent process. So we there's normally a vendor's commission and a buyer's premium, as you said, and yeah.
Okay, that sounds great. And we'll come to pricing in a bit, because I question also over the differences between a low estimate and your reserve price, because it might be getting a bit technical. But Jess, if we can come to you and ask you to sort of explain a bit about the MyArtBroker model. You're an online business, and so therefore I imagine you have fewer overheads and your margins, you can play a bit more with margins. Is that right? Can you tell me a bit about the process?
Yeah, that's right. So we're a sort of data-driven online marketplace that, in a sort of brief overview, connects a buyer and a seller of blue chip prints, and sort of offers a slight alternative to the auction route or potentially the gallery route. And we offer, so it slightly depends where you're coming at it. If you're a seller, it's 0% commission, and we take works on consignment, a bit like you would anywhere else for a certain period of time. And in the same way with all of these things, when you're sort of speaking to a seller about works of art, the initial conversation is done with images, and it's done with, you're immediately, when you come onto our website, you're put in touch with a specialist or a specialist advisor who can talk you through the market, where the prices are at the moment, and give you a full overview of the market and sort of be able to make an informed decision. And then exactly that, we take works on consignment. The seller pays nothing, it's 0%. And we do all the connecting between the buyer and the seller. So your specialist advisor becomes your sort of touch point throughout the whole selling process. If you're a buyer, it's a similar route. There's a lot of information on the website about our pricing. And again, you'll put in touch with a specialist who can tell you what we've got available, guide you through the selling or the buying process, and answer any questions as well. So that's one side of our business that makes up the buying and selling side, I suppose.
Very clear. And again, we'll come to pricing, because I'm fascinated by how you use data at MyArtBroker also. Yeah. But Huw, if I could ask you, your gallery's active in the secondary market, and ahead of this conversation, we had a chat about the primary market and the competitiveness of the primary market. The access to artists. You might have to, try and get on a waiting list at a gallery to, have access to an artist's work. And if you do, there are all sorts of, conditions on that. I want to ask you about your business model also, but I just wondered, first off, would you say that the secondary market's a bit of more of a level playing field? What attracts you to that area of the market?
Yeah, it absolutely is. I think so. I've worked in both areas of the market. I'm a collector, and I have been a collector at heart for 20 years. The first 10 years of that, I was purely collecting. Since 2015, 2016, I've been operating more as in a dealer and advisor capacity. The primary market is fascinating. I have a love-hate relationship with it. Access is difficult if you're not, if you're not mixing with the right circles, if you're not willing to support a galleries program, often access can be an issue. I fully understand that. I think the primary market is a lot different to the secondary market. But I think ultimately that was what drew me to the print market and the editions market. Access is less, there's less game playing. There's none of this kind of buy one, donate one to an institution. There are publishers now who are introducing no resale clauses, and I understand that. But typically speaking, the secondary market, print market is there for everyone to enjoy. Anyone can buy a print by an artist that we're talking about today, the blue chip artists. You've got the choices of going to Carolin and buying from Bonhams. I seem to spend half my life requesting condition issues from the auction houses, and on a good day I might win 1 in 10. You've also got the choice of going to galleries, but there's no game playing. If you want to buy an artwork, and this is publishers aside, if you want to buy anything that you see on our website, we're going to talk to you and we're going to advise you to the best of our ability. We're not going to ask you about your history in art collecting. We're not going to ask you which institutions you support. We're not going to ask, we're not going to give you the third degree, where the works are available to buy, and we're there to support and advise as best we can. So, like I said, I enjoy the primary market. I go to a lot of the art fairs. I've got good relationships with a lot of the primary galleries, but I think really what drew me to the print market and the secondary market for prints and editions was it's more accessible. It's easier to navigate. If you want to sell an artwork, you're not going to get a nasty email a couple of months later, or it's not going to be taken down from the auction. You can do that, and there's plenty of routes to do that. It's more of the team hate me saying this word, but it's more of a liquid market. You've got the options to buy and sell freely without some of the restrictions you do have in the primary market.
That's very well put, I think. I think we should come to price. I think that's a really interesting topic in this market. We're talking about, when we talk about blue chip names, we're talking about, David Hockney, Lichtenstein, Warhol, Bridget Riley, some of the biggest names in modern and contemporary art. And, I think few people know that you can pick up a really good Warhol for 12 grand. I'd like to ask you all, really, I think, what are the main factors that drive the pricing of an edition, and what are the biggest difficulties in determining the market value for a print? Jess, maybe we can go to you first, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are so many different factors when it actually comes down to it that makes a print valuable. And that is what is so interesting when you've got, established collectors or even new collectors coming in and asking about price points and why something is this. And, they've been to one gallery and they've seen this and they've found out that the price is X, and then they've been to an auction house and it's this price. We have so many questions around pricing. And I think what it comes down to, and actually what we're all trying to do, is bring so much more visibility in terms of that pricing and tracking the market and showing what these prices are. And so things like demand at the time for an artist, how much demand there is. All these artists are fluctuating constantly, maybe marginally, but in terms of popularity. The size of the edition, the kind of popularity of the subject. Even within prints, there's so many sort of technicalities. Like you can have something from a standard edition, and then you could have a trial proof, which has unique elements to the standard edition, or you can have an artist proof. So there's so many different variations within a print that either adds value or takes a bit of value away. And then I think we'll all agree, we constantly talk about condition. It's like, what is the condition of an artwork? Because these things are 1 of 10, 1 of 20, 1 of 200. If one is in worse condition, you'll also often have people waiting for another one. There's an element that you're allowed to be a bit more selective because of the nature of how a print works. And so I think all of these things together make you understand where the pricing is coming from and what an artwork is priced at.
there are sort of quite consistent variables, it seems, in the edition prints and multiples sort of field that make it more easily comparable, perhaps, than unique works. But then within that, there are all sorts of different factors. Obviously, provenance is key as well. Provenance, certificates of authenticity, signatures. I mean, Carolin, is the bar perhaps, are you stricter at auction? I mean, for instance, if a work didn't have a certificate of authenticity by Banksy, I don't know why I sort of said that under my breath, Banksy, would you sell it? Or what happens in that situation?
Yes, exactly. Again, at auctions, we really pride ourselves with extensive research. Every piece that comes to us, we would go really above and beyond to find out everything about the piece, from the provenance to the condition, the significance, the rareness, like really research in depth. And for example, your question about Banksy, we would only include Banksy prints in our sales if they have a certificate of authenticity by pest control, because in every single piece that comes to the market has to have it. If it doesn't have it, you would obviously have the consignor to apply for it, and hopefully we will get it, but we would not include it in a sale without it, because that's the very high standard we follow. Like we want to be 100% sure that everything is fine with the work, and if it and Banksy's authentication board agrees with a piece, then we would love to sell it, but it has to have the certificate of authenticity to just support our very high standards of selling at auction.
Is that a unique situation with Banksy, or would that be, I mean, I can't think of any other artists, and you guys chime in off my top of my head, who have that sort of certificate of authenticity in that way. I mean, obviously, provenance and signature. Huw, I can see you nodding. What's your take on that?
Provenance, I don't think is a big thing in the print world. I think when you're talking about, old paintings, provenance becomes very important. Knowing the history of the work, knowing the complete history is important. For prints, we don't often talk about provenance so much. As if we're consigning in a work, we ask questions about the history, where the buyer bought it from, but it's not a big thing for us. COAs is an interesting one, and I think one of the common misconception in the print market is that every print should come with a COA, or every edition, whether it's a print or a sculpture. And there's barely a day that goes by, maybe certainly weekly, we get that question: does it come with a COA? More often than not, it doesn't. And I think maybe the Banksy, the pest control, them bringing the COAs as a almost like a prerequisite for selling a Banksy print, as Carolin said. I know MyArtBroker do the same, and we now do the same as well. We won't sell a Banksy print without the COA. But really, that's rare. Daria, who I listened to earlier, Jealous, they do issue prints for strictly COA, for strictly prints. But again, I'm really struggling to think of many other artists where COAs are common. So I would estimate, because I've been asked this question before, I would say 80+% of prints that we sell do not come with an official COA. And when I say official, I mean it's produced or it's issued by the artist or the publisher. It may even be 95%, but it's high. So I think what we've adapted to as an industry is producing gallery COAs. We obviously do give a guarantee of authenticity. We invest a huge amount of time into research and documenting, especially with certain artists, one being Yaya Kusama, where there are a lot of fakes on the market, and often they're very difficult to tell. So we've had to invest over the years a lot of time, a lot of resource and energy to understand that market, so we can give that confidence to our clients that what they're buying is the real thing. But again, you won't get a COA with a Kusama print. You'll get a certificate card with an original work of art. But back in 2019, the Kusama studio stopped authenticating her prints. For one reason or another. I think it's a trend we've seen with other studios as well over the past 5-10 years. But it is a misconception in the sense that everyone, or especially people new to the market, feel that, and we've had plenty of times in the past where buyers will not buy that artwork because it doesn't have that official COA. But like I said, it's the 5-10% that do have that, not the 90-95.
And will that affect the price? Will they be much more valuable if they do come with the COA, or it won't affect? No. I mean, for the Banksy market, I guess what it does create is a situation that if in the past we have sold a print without the COA,
you basically then pass a headache on to the buyer. So we might be 100% certain about the history of the print. We have consigners here in Bristol who were buying his prints back in the day. They put them on the wall in IKEA frames and they've enjoyed them, but they never applied for the COA. They weren't even aware that these things were going up in value as they have done over the past 15, 20 years. But it doesn't impact value, but it does create a headache for the buyer who then goes on to buy that print, because the process of getting a COA from pest control can be very slow. And that's part of the reason why we've now made the decision not to sell without the COA. It's not because we don't believe the print is real, because we feel like we've got the knowledge and expertise to determine that. We just don't want to pass a headache to a buyer.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think it shows, like, with all of these situations, how important it is to have that physical touch point with someone as well, and someone in the industry who sort of has a specialism within it. Because I think knowing all these different factors and knowing how many different factors come into it means it becomes so important before putting a huge amount of money into an artwork, sort of having that knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we saw the Warhol Authentication Board being disbanded. It's a very litigious and tricky area, I think, but this is where expertise really, comes in to the matter. I think, looking at the time, I'd like to move on to the question of investment, Huw, if I may. I mean, I wanted to ask you, and we talked about blue chip artists being a good investment for the reasons we discussed at the beginning. But as an investor as well as a dealer, why do you think prints make such good investments? And if you were looking at a blue chip print purely for investment, what would you be looking for?
I wouldn't necessarily say prints are a good investment. I would say that blue chip artworks by editions by blue chip artists, or all artworks by blue chip artists, carry less risk. We talked at the start of this conversation around what defines blue chip, and we talked about a stable and a consistent market. If you look at the different areas of the art market, of which there are lots, all of us, I think, specialize in this small niche of editions by established artists. I'm sure we're all very, passionate about it. But what you do get when you buy established names of blue chip artists is reassurance that, there will always be demand for that work. If you buy and if you invest in kind of emerging art, which I wouldn't necessarily advise unless you really know what you're doing, because the odds are stacked against you. There's a strong chance that painting is not going to be worth anything in 5-10 years. It doesn't mean you can't enjoy that painting and invest. Whilst we talk about investment, there are so many other benefits to being involved in the art market and buying art, being able to live with it, as opposed to maybe investing in stocks and shares, seeing a tracker on your computer screen. That's about as much enjoyment you're going to get from it, and seeing it go up, hopefully. But with art, you get to live with it and you get to enjoy it. So, yeah, I mean, is it a guaranteed good investment? I don't know. I think what I would say was with almost 100% certainty that is, if you buy blue chip art, you are likely to see, and we need to look back at kind of historical trends in the art market, that you are likely to see an upward trajectory over time. You might need to ride out these little waves and these lulls like we're seeing at the moment. We are inherently in an art market lull at the moment, but if you take a macro view at things and you're buying for the right reasons, you're buying because you want to collect and you love the art, I think there's a strong chance that in 5, 10, 15, 20 years time, that artwork will be more than it's worth now. I'm not guaranteeing it, but my kind of experience in the market over the past 10 years is one of twofold. It either quickly dies a quick death and prices come down quite quickly if it's hyped, if it's kind of, there's an element of market FOMO. But the works that I've bought over the years that are prints by blue chip artists have nearly always gone up over time.
Yes, I can see you nodding. Do you have something to add about why prints make good investment? Or
I think what the question that we get a huge amount is, questions around pricing, questions around if they will go up in value, if they will go down. And I think what's so interesting about prints is you're able to, at least on some level, track the trajectory of prices, thanks to auction houses, thanks to, all this public data out there. And I mean, one thing I love about MyArtBroker is when you go on the website, there is this sort of wealth of data there where it pulls together auction results, so public auction results from 400 different auction houses. So you've got Sotheby's and Christie's and Bonhams and Phillips, but you've also got all these other specialist prints auctions. And then with that data, you can track the market, you can see how it's gone up, how it's gone down, where the peaks have been. And what's so amazing about that is then your buyer make their own informed decision. So, you can display all the facts, you can give them a really clear outlook. And you can normally see with, just as Huw said, with these sort of blue chip artists, that over time they've increased in value. And as with everything, when there's political factors or economical factors, things change. But there is a trajectory and information there in a clear way that you're able to see it and to see what's going up and down, which is fascinating. It's really interesting to look at.
It's very useful in the market, and certainly as a journalist, to have these data points so we can actually base things in fact. I think we saw a graph there flashed up which actually showed something slightly different to what you're saying, but we're looking at the Banksy market. If we can talk a bit about him, I know we have mentioned him, but here we have a slide about showing the trajectory of his prints market. Now, we did see a massive spike in around 2021. Obviously the Girl with Balloon shredded, and then I think it returned to market in 21 and went for 18.5 million. And around that time, we saw this boom in his prices, both in unique works, but it also had an effect on the prints market naturally. That seems to have now dropped away. But I mean, how would you sort of characterize that, Jess? I mean, what's happening in the market? Is it a good investment? Is he still a good investment? Are we just seeing a natural recalibration?
Yeah, I think the Banksy, I mean, we all found the Banksy sort of boom in 2021 was a fascinating time, fueled, as with all these living artists as well, by there was demand, just Banksy's unique position in both the art world and in popular culture. And so there was this boom in 2021, which I think if you look at that graph now is leveling out and is maturing and is doing what we saw with all the other markets, which is becoming a much more mature and steady place slowly and sort of recalibrating. The amazing thing about these works is many of them were bought, and Huw can elaborate this, but in Bristol in sort of the early 2000s for £200, £300. So compared to what they were bought for and sort of considered not that valuable, it's gone up an exponential amount. And I think with Banksy, as he does these sort of wild or sort of media catching things, his prices fluctuate a lot more than, say, Warhol's, who's no longer living. And so it's a bit more of a steady market.
Yeah, and I think the thing about that graph is it starts at 2020.
Yeah.
So we're looking at a very small part of the market. If you were to zoom out on that graph, you would see that section there move up and a line like that going up. Because I would say from when he first really came onto the scene in 2004, 2005, we saw some big auctions. I remember them well because I was just getting into the art world then. But say in 2008, I think Bonhams had a big auction and one of his prices went sky high. And that was really the start of the price escalation or the price increases we saw. But we did see a steady increase in his prices over a 10-15 year period. And like Jess said, we saw a bubble. We now look back at it, we know it was a bubble. Things boomed in 2020, 2021. We weren't particularly active at that time in the Banksy market, but we saw what was happening, and we did sell a few works along the way. And works that we were seeing that were selling for 20,000, 6 months later in 2021 were selling for 60,000. And I think that did create a bubble. So I think that's a bit of an anomaly. But I think I think we're down to a point now where prices are probably more consistent to late in 2019, 2020. It's still well above where it was. And like you said, Annie, the people that started buying the works kind of, 15, 20 years ago, they were paying 450, 750 pounds, whatever it might be. So there has been amazing kind of price appreciation in his market. Is it a good investment now? It's a good question. Who's to say that? If you categorize Banksy as a blue chip artist, which I personally do, I feel like as long as you're happy to kind of ride out this lull, it's hard to say whether prices are going to edge down a bit further. I think from what we're seeing, they have stabilized a lot over the last 6 months. And this month especially, we've started to see more interest in the work, more inquiries coming in. There are owners of his work who firmly believe this is going to bounce and it's going to fly back up to 2021 levels, and it's not. But what I do think is we will always see Banksy as being a key player in the art market, or a big artist in the art market. So it's a pretty safe, again, talking about blue chip, it's a safe place to be. If you love his work, if you're passionate about his work, and he's an amazing artist, now could be a good time to buy.
I mean, I just think it's ordinary that we're talking about Banksy as a blue chip artist. I mean, for those who are as old as me, you know, will remember him from the early days, and now to be talking about him as blue chip, it's quite phenomenal, I think. So we've discussed the fact that the art market is facing a slowdown. It's quite difficult to talk about the art market as a whole. We always sort of have that caveat, don't we, that there are lots of separate sub-markets that are loosely related. But in terms of the blue chip print market, you know, where are we seeing activity, and which names are really holding and increasing in value at the moment, and where are we seeing a slowdown? I mean, Carolin, I wonder if now might be a good opportunity to talk about some of the recent highlights at the Bonhams sale back in December.
Yes, absolutely. For example, like I think basically the artists that we define as basically blue chip, like they definitely hold their ground. Like there's always a how do you say, a huge demand basically for quality on the market. So basically, if there's fantastic Warhol pieces, Hockney pieces, etc., they will always find their way to a buyer. So I think the blue chip artists in general, like, or what you define as a blue chip artist, they're probably more resistant to the changes of the market than other categories. That's first of all, I would say. So for example, at auctions, we've really seen that appetite and demand for really prints of high quality. So we have seen fantastic auction results for American pop art, modern British, contemporary printmakers. So for example, in our December sale, we had two wonderful Marylands, fantastic, fine, fresh quality, and they really achieve phenomenally great prices. So, for example, the hot pink iconic one sold for over 150,000, including premium. Then we had also last year a beautiful Mick Jagger print in our British Cool auction, which was sold over £200,000, also including premium. And then, for example, David Hockney prints, we were quite delighted to offer even 14 pieces in our last fine December sale, and they did perform really well because there was this appetite for high quality. We started with very early pieces from the 60s, so very contemporary pieces. And we achieved several world auction records, for example, for the Pretty Tulips that was sold for over 40,000, which was the world auction record for this particular piece. And then the colored flowers made of paper and ink, another one which was sold for over 49,000, also including premium. So we've really, I do strongly feel like I think the prints market is definitely far more resistant to changes of the market, and quality will always find its home.
Warhol clearly coming out on top there. I mean, as you mentioned, I think the auction data says that while the sort of £10 million plus blue chip, use the word blue chip there,
yes,
part of struggling to sell, actually there's more activity at the lower end of the market, certainly at auction where we can see the data. I just wondered if that was true also for you, Jess and Huw. I mean, what's the blue chip print market? Is it sort of defying the odds, or is it seeing a slowdown like the rest of us?
I think we would sort of, I mean, we were speaking slightly before that sort of the middle of the range, that 10 to, even up to sort of 60,000, that bracket is seeing so much more activity because it's such an entry point and it's such a easier selling point to begin with when the market's feeling a bit softer. I think, as Caro said, it's also very much a kind of, if something is very special, people are suddenly being much more particular. And I think if something is very special, then there will be people always there who want to invest in it. And for some buyers, it's actually a very good time to buy because there's not such a competitive drive, you know. So if you are in the market and you're ready, it's a very good time to buy because the prices have softened a bit. So I think we see that things that have got significant attributes for attention do still garner high prices.
And there are opportunities for buyers.
Totally.
What's your experience, Huw, in the gallery and the dealer sector? Is the blue chip market, print market, seeing a bit of a slowdown? What's your experience?
No, yes, it has definitely over the past couple of years. I'd like to think it has slowed down, but I think we're hopefully turning a bit of a corner. I think there was a period of a couple of years post that bubble we talked about where people hadn't quite adjusted to the new norm. So consigners were, you know, people who were looking to sell were looking to still achieve the prices that perhaps they could have done 3-6 months beforehand, which was unrealistic. Buyers were not keen to jump back in. They were seeing prices coming down, and they, you know, I think a lot of them were. There was a sentiment in the market that I guess we lost that desire to buy now just in case prices went up a bit more. So I think it's difficult. I would say we've definitely seen a softening of the past few years, and that's across the board. I can't really think of any artist where that hasn't happened, but it's happened. I think those who went up more during the bubble, so to speak, or the really buoyant times in 2021, it was a lot of the street artists, the likes of Invader and Banksy. Their values flew up. They've come back down. Then you've got some other artists, some of the more arguably slightly more blue chip artists, you know, the Hockneys, the Rileys, the Kusamas, who didn't see quite so much kind of volatility in their market, but it has still softened. I think it's flatlining, and I think we're in a good place going into 2025. I think the past month has really proven to me that is the case. We are seeing, you know, we've always seen demand for these artists' works, even at the lowest point in the market, but we're starting to see that demand tick up a little bit more. Whether that's just a little blip and it's been a good couple of weeks, I'm not sure. Who knows what this year holds? It's very difficult to predict, but the things we're seeing in the past couple of months suggest that we're in a much more level, sustainable, organic place, and I think that bodes well for the future, and, you know, especially the near future in the print market.
I mean, that chimes with what I've been hearing in other markets too, that the New York sales in November last year, then Art Basel, Miami Beach, there was sort of a plateau had been reached, or bottom had been reached, and things seem to be sort of doing slightly better. We'll come to our predictions, and if I can ask you first, perhaps Huw and Jess, as sort of our online business model representatives, you know, there's a great deal of information, a great deal of noise available online for collectors today, and for collectors and potential collectors to wade through. How, as sellers, do you cut through that noise? And then what advice would you give to collectors in terms of doing their research and due diligence, or just generally navigating the landscape, other than directing them to your own websites, which I'm sure you would do? But what would you recommend to collectors, particularly those who are new to the field?
Jess?
Do you know what? I think so much of it is about education and definitely like speaking to different people and building trust with people. Because I think at the end of the day, it comes down to an understanding of that you're happy to purchase a work for that much, and the understanding of why, you know, and what makes a print valuable. And also, do you love it? You know, we say it so often, but if it's going to hang on your wall for, you know, and you see it every morning when you wake up, you've got to love it as well. So I think it's about building trust with the people that you are buying the works from, and making sure you understand where it's all coming from.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there is a lot of noise. There's a lot of things in the market which make it difficult for someone, especially new to the art market, to determine what they should pay for certain work. A good example of that is, I think I got an email from one of your colleagues yesterday offering an unsigned more ones for £25,000. Now, if you go online, and I did this before the talk today, there's a range between $25,000. The highest price on the market on Artsy is $85,000. So that's a huge range, and it kind of it's a very difficult thing to keep on top of pricing, to keep on top of the market, especially when you're managing 500 to 1,000 works, works for sale that we currently have. That's either works we've got in stock or works we're selling on behalf of consigners. So keeping on top of your pricing is difficult, and I kind of understand why some galleries out there are unable to do that. But what that does create is that noise in the market. I think also if you look at auctions, there's lots of different factors, as Carolin, I'm sure will agree, which comes into what price an artwork achieves on the day. You've got two different editions on two separate days. They can go for completely different amounts. Condition we've talked about is very important, especially for some of the older artists, the older artworks. But condition is key, number of bidders on the day. So again, that creates that kind of uncertainty to a buyer. It's actually, what is market value? What I would say is, like you've said, Annie, just research. And I think the important thing with that is, ignore the anomalies. You're always going to get the anomalies. The more ones that's for sale at $85,000, ignore it. The work that flies at auction or tanks at auction, ignore it. You've got to take a macro look at this when you're pricing works, and it's a challenge we have every day. Is trying to work out how to price works, especially the ones that don't come to the market very often. So yeah, do your research, ignore the anomalies. Like Jess said, work with an advisor. Like we've all been on a journey of, 10, 15, 20 years of trying to understand this amazing market we operating, but it's very confusing and it's a difficult one. So finding an advisor who you trust, who you maybe have shared values with, I think is important, because they will bring a wealth of experience that if you're new to the market, you can't possibly replicate and you can't buy it. But if you find an advisor who you trust and who you're willing to work with, they should bring that. And like with all advisors, whether it's in the art market or elsewhere in different industries, they should add value. They should not be seen as a cost. They should be seen as an investment. And there's plenty of good art advisors out there.
Yeah, and I think we didn't actually touch on at all the fact that like all this auction data is out there, but actually there is not much data for all the private sales that happen, throughout the whole of the art market, which happens so much. And on our site, we implement our own private sales into all this data that we're compiling and the auction stuff. But again, it's a small margin of all the sales out there. So it's drawing on the information you have and making sure you're aware of prices so that you're not paying huge amounts of money for a work that, might be on sale somewhere else for a lot less.
It's a bit of a lag there. It's a problem we have to, find out prices from dealers. Over operation, but it's something we like to track as well. So it's good to know that MyArtBroker is making that public. We've got a couple of minutes before our Q&A, but I'd like to finally ask you all if you've got any tips or trends for 2025. I know this one, you'll love this one, Huw. Carolin, I wondered if I could ask you first, because we spoke about the blue chip female artists who are gaining attention, and Bonhams has a dedicated sale in September. I wondered if you could tell us a bit about that and a bit about some of the blue chip female artists who you think are coming to the fore.
Yes, exactly. At Bonhams, we have this sale called Blazing a Trail. It happens normally once per year and is celebrating the best of modern British female artists. And we, for example, had one of these sales last year. It's always an interdisciplinary sale with our modern British department. So there's unique pieces in it and prints. And all the prints in the last year's sale, the sale did really well in general, but like all the prints were sold. So it was a white glove section for the prints department, which was fantastic. And we really do see that female printmakers and blue chip, let's say female printmakers, gaining really attention. So we had really strong prices for Bridget Riley's, for Barbara Hepworth's, Emmons, Paula Rego, Elizabeth Frank, and many other ladies. And that's really something we see for the modern British printmakers, but also on a more international side for artists like Helen Frankenthaler, Kusama, Louise Bourgeois. Their works are in high demand, and the market for them is really doing really well.
Would you say Tracy Emmons a tip for this year? I mean, she's an artist who I think, obviously a peer of Damien Hirst, and hasn't, to my mind, been considered blue chip until possibly the last few years when she's had quite a few museum shows and gallery shows. Do you see her as an example?
Absolutely. So at auction, like her pieces do really well, and I think we have a lot of collectors, particularly collecting her pieces. So I think I expect really great auction records in 2025 for her pieces. Absolutely.
Huw, predictions for 2025?
I'm going to be a bit biased here, but I think that we're going to see a continuing growing interest in blue chip prints. I think we've seen a bit of a shift recently where, I think some of the bigger collectors and the bigger advisors of this art market have kind of started to take prints a bit more seriously and offer them to their clients as an option, as opposed to just significant kind of unique works. There's been a bit recently in the press around private sales and the growth of the private sale market. I think that will continue. I think until we really start seeing, stronger auction results and stronger kind of hype in the market, which does lend itself really nicely to consign to auction, I think private sales will be key for us as galleries, but also the auction houses as well. And what I really hope is a bit more kind of positivity in the market. I think, call it what you want. I think you and Worth called it doom porn or something last year. I think we got to a stage towards the end of last year where all you'd ever hear is negativity about the state of the art market. Sotheby's making another 100 people redundant, and it almost got too much. And I think really we're kind of beyond that now. I think the market's in a great place, and I think hopefully this year we'll start seeing a bit more positivity, and we'll start seeing things kind of move up again.
Sounds good. I'm here for the positivity. Jess, what can I ask you briefly before we've got a couple of questions coming in? What have you got? What are your tips for this year?
I would say that it would be, on a positive note, I'm hoping that we see an even greater push and kind of trust around online sales and an online push, which we've seen a huge amount, across, even at auction, there's sales that are now fully online and everyone does a huge amount of business, but that real trust and sort of understanding in the online marketplace would be nice to see growing even more, especially with sort of established collectors, long-term collectors. I think we see a lot of new collectors coming in who love the online concept and, are very happy to sort of work in that way, but it's just nice to see it grow on every platform.
That's a good one. And this rolls nicely into our first question from our audience, which is, what does an atypical print buyer look like? Is there such a thing? Who wants to take that?
No, I don't think so. I think whilst we don't always know as much about our clients as we'd like to, I mean, a lot we offer a buy now service through our website and via kind of platforms such as Artsy. We don't often know who the background to that person's collecting or what they're interested in, but I don't know. I'm not one for stereotyping. I don't think there's a print collector as such. I think prints can appeal and should appeal to all levels, whether you're new to collecting or whether you're an experienced art collector. You might have focused in the past on unique works, paintings, but actually, why can't you have a nice David Hockney swimming pool in your living room as well?
And I would add also to that, because prints are produced as they were initially introduced to the market as a democratic medium, so everybody could afford art and have access to art. So, and it obviously covers everything from 1500s to very modern and contemporary. So I think, there's really something for everybody, because prints by artists like Henry Moore, they start from £500. Everybody in a way can afford a print, even a student that saves up a lot of money. It's a medium that was introduced, so it could be for more people. So I think it's a very broad range, and that's the beauty, but probably why we all love working with print. So there's really one for everybody, and everybody can find a beautiful area they fall in love with.
Okay, I've got another question here, and this might be a bit of a tough one. It's not a tough one, bit unfair. From auction to online broker to gallery, this question is: could your panelists give me their elevator pitch for why that channel is the one to choose for a new collector getting into collecting art? Who's feeling brave?
I'll start. Right. I think at auction, like at Bonhams, we really, what I said earlier, we pride ourselves that we have one for everyone, and that's really true, because we do sales in our Knightsbridge sale room that more cover the mid-market. We start with £500, but in our New Bond Street sale room, we would offer maybe more the like fine and academic pieces. So yeah, there's one for everyone. You find everything from 1500 to now, and it's a public institution and auction. Like everybody can access it. They can come to view it. They can speak to us. They can speak to the specialist. We are very happy to help with everything. And then in a way, an auction is an open model where the market will decide how much a piece will go for. Like this, everybody's invited to jump in to bid for it. And yeah, it's open. It's there and public and for everyone. That's a pitch for the auction house, but I'm sure like Jess and Huw have also some pitches.
I'll take one. I'll have a go. So I'm pro auctions. I'm pro gallery, obviously. What I think you get with buying from galleries is you have that ability to buy something today at a price or a cost that you know. I think when you bid at auction, you're not sure until the hammer goes down what you're paying for that, and even then you've got all the multiple costs on top of that, including uncertainty around logistics costs, etc. I think if you buy from a gallery, you have that certainty as to the price you're paying, and also timing. So I think from a speed perspective, we can get an artwork to you if you're in the UK often within a few days, sometimes a bit longer if it's a bit more complicated, and we support that whole service from that initial inquiry all the way through to the delivery. We take that whole service very seriously. I think when you're buying from auction, I think this is a bit of feedback for the auction houses, is often once you've bought, you're kind of left alone. You've got to make your payment, then you've got to find someone to come and pick it up and bring it back to you and stuff. What I would say, in order to make sure I'm still on Carolin's Christmas card list this year, is that buy from auction is exhilarating. I love it. It's one of the best parts of my job. I really enjoy seeking out the bargain and trying to find the piece that's going to hammer below market value. I still get nervous buying from auction. I certainly get that kind of dopamine rush. So there's pros and cons to both models. Both have their place in the art world, obviously.
This is like Dragon's Den. I would say that we fall in a kind of hybrid between the two, in the way that we have a very tailored approach where there's our website, which has a huge amount of data points and knowledge and sort of information on auction results. So our prices are very much based on public auction results. And because we don't have the same overheads potentially as an auction house with a big building and all of these things, our margins can be a little bit smaller. But we also slightly offer a broader range of things. Like we have the buying and selling advisory side, but then we have a section that's called My Portfolio, which is for collectors to be able to add their works to their own little space, and then watch as the market goes up and down. And as our website tracks the market, you get these emails that tell you how your artwork is doing. So we've got the kind of informational side of an auction. We can talk you through why we think a price should be where it is. We also do all of the buying side. So again, it's an all-in price, a bit like Huw was explaining. So rather than having this unknown, you have an all-in buying price that will be the work shipped to you at the end. So we handle all the logistics and all the operational side as well. So it's sort of what you're looking for, and it's an educational journey, I'm sure, for all of them.
Well, I think those were all brilliant pitches, and that just, I think, is a good place to wrap up the talk. We've come to the top of the hour, so it just leaves me to thank my panelists, Carolin, Huw and Jess. Thanks so much for your insights today. It's been fascinating.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
It's been fun. Thank you so much. Bye.